In 1920s, the famous astronomer Edwin Hubble discovered that galaxies are moving away from each other. Thus, it was scientifically proven that when going backwards, the entire universe was only one dot at the very beginning. In other words, it had zero volume. And suddenly, the Big Bang. 13.7 billion years later, the Earth is a place of people, animals, plants, mountains, seas, and also a dazzling order. But how? What caused our transition to such a splendid universe of existence from the zero volume that is non-existence? There are 4 different ways to explain this. First, by causes, second, by self-creation, third, by nature, and fourth, by the Creator. All other theological and theoretical possibilities are also subtitles of these 4 ways. And since not all of these options can be true at the same time, we can examine them one by one and proceed with the elimination method in order to get the right result. Yet in this video we will only discuss their main ideas without giving so much details. If their foundations are fallacious, the detailed arguments and theories within them will fail too. Well, the first way to answer the question of how we came into existence. By causes. I mean the elements. In other words, the idea we have been formed as a result of a combination of different elements. So how can the lifeless elements come together and create a living being? By chance? To say that one thing comes to life by coincidence means to accept that all components forming that thing comes together completely by chance and without the involvement of anybody. In this world, everything, living and non-living, has been composed of certain amounts of elements and substances. For example, the human body consists of such elements as proteins, carbohydrates, fats, hydrogen, potassium, sodium, and so on. These substances, with precise measurement, constitute our heart, brain, kidney, stomach, eyes, ears, and other organs together with 1 trillion cells. Now let us examine with an example only the possibility that a human being comes into existence as a result of the combination of the causes, and by chance, that is to say, the elements of which we are composed. Let this be Mr. Coincidence. Mr. Coincidence is a doctor who is well known in the pharmaceutical industry and has produced medicines for thousands of diseases. One day, Mr. Coincidence is asked to produce a drug, and he immediately goes into his lab to begin to work on it. He has made research by spending days and nights with calculations, experiments, and errors, and at the end of a couple of months, he finds out that the drug he will make consists of 300 different substances. Mr. Coincidence immediately puts these substances on the shelves in his lab. Because of his hard work, Mr. Coincidence sweats a little and opens a window and leaves the lab to make a coffee and have a rest. He leaves the door open when he goes out, and the windows and doors are open, and suddenly a strong wind blows and moves all the bottles on the shelves. Papers fly, tubes roll, and the bottles are knocked over and broken when the door, unable to resist the wind, is slammed. But what is that? As in Mr. Coincidence's calculations, all the substances in the bottles begin to drip into the test tube in precise amounts by flowing from the bottles on the shelves. While being about to fall to the floor, a bottle also taps the key of the stove, turns it on, the tube begins to boil. When the overboiling tube cracks, all the liquid in it drips into the table, then from the table into the empty bottle on the floor. Let the wind blow again. The cork of the bottle falls exactly on top of the bottle and the bottle closes. At that moment, Mr. Coincident comes in the room and he is astonished, but not because of the unexpected situation. In fact, what exactly happened was what he expected. He puts the drug in the tester right away. The tester confirms that the drug has been boiled and completed in the right time by using the correct measures and the exact calculations. Mr. Coincidence proudly adds this drug among the thousands of other effective drugs formed by chance as well. What if we question the probability of this incidence being true mathematically, or, for me, there is no need for that. Anyone who has sound mind agrees how superstitious and impossible this is. Yes, this incident we consider impossible shows us that even a simple and lifeless drug cannot come into being by chance. However, a person who is much more complex than a bottle of inanimate drug has billions of cells, hundreds of different emotions, senses, and various features such as sight, hearing, thinking, speaking, etc. That person cannot be formed as a result of dead elements coming together by chance. Yes, so far we have understood how unreasonable it is for a human body to come into being by chance. Now imagine each of the 7 billion people of the world, millions of species of plants and animals, mountains and seas would come into existence by chance separately, and all of them would continue to be formed by chance every time. Now we're further away from thinking logically, right? So it is impossible for the causes to create the universe on their own. So we can eliminate the first way. And now the second option. By self-creation, by itself. Even this statement has many fallacies. Self-creation is contradictory and impossible in essence. Because self-creation means either that an already existing thing formed itself later on, which means if something that has already been made up by itself, it cannot create itself because it already exists at the very first. In other words, there is no need for the existing one to regenerate itself, because it is unreasonable for something that already exists to come into existence again. Our self-creation means something that doesn't exist creates itself. It means something that did not exist at first creates itself later. Eventually, a paradox comes out and the result cannot be concluded. But for instance, if we claim that the atoms that form an orange say, let's come together and become orange, and then the atoms make up the orange by themselves, we encounter an impossibility like this. Something can't be both a judge and a prisoner at the same time. For example, the human body made up of tissues, cells, and eventually atoms, very similar to a building. When we look closely at the atoms considered as the smallest building blocks of matter, we observe that the atoms stand together like bricks of a building and form various molecules. If we say that the atoms get the form of an orange by themselves, then it is necessary to accept that these atoms are both a judge and a prisoner at the same time. Can it be possible? The judge is a person who is a decision maker, and the prisoner is a person who obeys the decision. If we think of a judge and a prisoner under normal conditions, the judge gives decisions and the prisoner obeys them. It is as simple as it is. However, we get into a dilemma again if the same person becomes a judge and a prisoner. Because if the judge decrees himself as a prisoner, being a judge will nullify because he is a prisoner. On the other hand, if he decides to save himself as a judge while he is a prisoner, then he will not be a prisoner anymore. So, he cannot be a judge and a prisoner at the same time. If we claim that the atoms stand together on their own, then the judge and prisoner become on the same level. Because if atoms give order to themselves to stand together, and then they listen to this order to stand together, in this case, we have to accept that they become both judges and prisoners at the same time. Well, behind all these logical proofs, we can clearly see that one God must have created nature. Firstly, let's look at the definition of nature. According to the popular encyclopedia Wikipedia, nature is defined as environment in the physical world. It includes all beings consisting of living and non-living beings that constantly renew and change themselves. According to all the other sources, this is, more or less, the common definition of nature. Well, can we explain the creation of the universe, that our actual existence by nature or natural causes? 1 minute. Did you notice the constantly renewing itself part of nature's definition? By itself? Didn't we eliminate this in the previous one? Through the perspective of a parable, let's take a closer look at the idea we are created by nature. One day, a brute and primitive man enters into a magnificent palace. The architectural structures and work of arts he sees around attract his attention. But since he doesn't know who made all of them, he thinks that one of the works in the palace has built this magnificent palace. Well, but which one? When he sees in this book the architectural design of the whole palace and the methods of construction of all the works in it, he says, Even though that book is inanimate, mindless, and unconscious like other objects in the palace, only because there are writings about the order of the palace in that book, he says, this is the book that made the palace. And thus he disclaims from reason. The universe that is constantly renewed and infinitely more artistic and orderly than this palace cannot have been created by any of the works in itself. Similarly, nature is like the book of this universe as well. We can examine and understand everything we see in the universe by reading the book of nature. But just because we are able to discover the qualities of beings in that book of nature, it is unreasonable to say that nature created all these beings. In other words, since nature came into being later, it is also an artifact of the universe. It cannot be the owner of all the works. Nature is the art. It cannot be the artist. It is an embroidery. It cannot be the embroiderer. It is a set of decrees. It cannot be the issuer of the decrees. Just as the sun reflects some part of a stream flowing through a forest, we can only see bubbles flowing through the stream where the sun reflects. As the tiny suns that appear in the bubbles on this stream show the sun in the sky, the following new bubbles point and testify to the sun in the sky as well. As they die and disappear again, they testify to the existence and survivability of a permanent sun. Accordingly, the universe that is constantly being renewed cannot have been made by nature that has to be renewed. Because nature itself is a subsequent cause, it is impossible for it to turn itself into nature. That means there must be someone who constantly renews nature, who is not in need of renewal and who should have no beginning and no end. The fourth option, a creator. In order for an object to come from the realm of non-existence to the realm of existence, there must be someone who has the will and power to do this. In other words, the creator that doesn't resemble the creation must be beyond the created world. Therefore, his existence and our existence are totally different concepts, and this creator has to be pre-eternal and post-eternal. because the creator who constantly renews and recreates the nature must be eternal and immortal. He must have absolute life so that he can give life to humans, animals, and plants continuously. As it is mentioned in the bubble example, he should be capable of giving life constantly. He must have infinite sovereignty and power so that he can command and rule the countless atoms, substances, and elements in the universe, and keep them together. He must have infinite knowledge, willpower, and wisdom so that he can know and choose the substances that make up the beings, and combine them all in the precise proportion to form the beings. Well, behind all these logical proofs, we can clearly see that one God must have created the universe. Otherwise, we would have to give the divinity separately to any of the elements one by one. This is also impossible and irrational, as in the second option. Instead of giving an atom under the command of countless gods, it makes more sense to give countless atoms under one God's command. Yes, we call this God Allah, because all the names and attributes of the Creator have been taught to us by the Holy Quran. But since the evidence for this subject is the matter of another video, so we do not mention it here. As a result, an artistic work requires an artist, and the artist of the universe, which is a perfect work of art, must be the sole and unique owner of all the attributes that would enable the making of this work. In order to learn more about this subject in detail, you can read 23 Flashes from Rizal and Nur collection that has been used as a main source in this video, and share this video so more people can watch it. Please feel free to leave your comments. Follow us to be more informed about our new videos.